All right, so now we're going to be moving on to one of our older wines for the night. This is going to be Bodega Corral. This is a 1976 Gran Reserva from Rioja. So there are quite a few things that we need to talk about this wine pre-opening. Obviously, I've already opened this bottle, but I can still talk you guys through kind of what we need to think about. So one of the biggest things is we do tend to have more sediment in wines that are a little bit older. Since they've been laying around longer, the molecules have started to slow. It's very natural. It will not hurt you. It's part of the wine process, but it can add a gritty texture to the wine, and we don't necessarily want that. So the most important thing when we're opening older wines, and I personally do this with wines that are really 10 to 13 years older, I normally will go ahead and let them stand for 24 hours. Upright and move them as little as possible. Ideally, do not touch them until you're ready to open them. What this is going to do is it's going to cause all of the sediment to hang on to the bottom of the bottle of wine. So we have all this wine that'll be sediment free, and it will also give you a wine that's not as cloudy. So that is the first thing that we need to do when we're talking about older wines. And the second thing we need to do is we need to think about how we're going to actually open this wine. The best way that we can open a wine of this age is to use a Durand. Durand is a very specialized tool. You can order them online. They are a little bit expensive. If you deal with a lot of older bottles, definitely something to consider investing in. You will get a lot of use out of it. It is a very unique tool. It has a long corkscrew, and then it has two prongs on the side to basically gently remove that cork from this bottle. Since most of us are probably not going to have this in our arsenal of wine tools, I'll kind of talk you through the options that how we can open this wine successfully. So I went ahead and removed the wax from this wine. Normally on younger wines, you can just go ahead and put the corkscrew straight through the wax and right into the cork. That won't hurt anything. It's how I open bottles during service. But since we were dealing with an older wine, I wanted to go ahead and look at the cork to see what I was going to deal with, to see if I was going to need any specialized tools or have anything else ready. And one of the things that I look at is once I take that wax off, I want to see how soft the cork is. So if I can get my nail into that cork pretty easily, I know I'm going to be dealing with a softer cork, and I'm going to have some issues getting this wine pulled. Since we're not going to be talking about a Durand, we're going to be working with just a traditional wine key. I do not recommend using an automatic bottle opener with this. They are not gentle. They are designed for younger wines that can just have their corks pulled out pretty quickly. This is not one of those wines. We are going to have to put a little effort into getting this open, which is not an issue. So the first thing that we want to make sure we do is we want to make sure we have a wine key that has a long corkscrew, that we can make sure that when we're putting this corkscrew into the bottle and into the cork itself, that the tip of the corkscrew goes through the bottom of the cork. That's going to make sure that we have most of the cork procured onto the corkscrew, and it's going to make the pulling mechanism a little bit easier. So once we have the corkscrew in, we will pull like normal. We just want to make sure we're doing very slow movements. And if we see any ripping or tearing, which is possible, it's an older wine, corkscrew can get soft, we take it a little extra slow and maybe readjust a bit, maybe twist that corkscrew in a little bit more, or maybe twist a little bit and pull at a different angle. All of that's going to help alleviate pressure from the specific spot that's causing the rip. Now, what do we do if this wine actually, or if this cork does actually rip? It happens. It's not an issue. There's plenty of ways that we can get about it. The first thing you can do is you can try to extract the little bit of cork in the bottle. Might be able to get it, you might not. It's really going to depend on how far down the neck that specific part of the cork is, and how big it is. If you can't get it out just with the wine key, we have options. The first thing that I will recommend is just going ahead and pushing that cork in. Not the best. We have things that we're going to have to do after that, but if we need to push it in, we can. And then our second step is going to be to grab a decanter and then grab a coffee filter or a strainer, ideally a coffee filter. And we will then fold that coffee filter up into a triangle so it will sit perfectly on a decanter, and then you can just pour that wine straight into the coffee filter. It will fill up and it will take some time, so definitely be slow with it. but always an option. It happens. It's happened during service. It happens at home. Not a big deal if that happens to you. So from there, once we have our wine in our glass, since we are dealing with something that's a little bit older, we're gonna have a quicker timeline with this wine. So this is a wine we wanna enjoy in a day, not in 2 days, because it has aged so long already. So it's going to hit its peak a lot quicker. So we wanna make sure that we're planning to consume this one all in a day, just to make sure we're enjoying it at its peak. So one of the fun things that I love about wines that are older is that our color is gonna change a bit. So we're gonna get what we call secondary characteristics in this wine and also tertiary characteristics due to the age. The secondary color characteristics are normally gonna be orange with red wines, or bricky is what we call it. It kind of turns the color of a red brick. And we're definitely getting that in this wine. If I was blinding this wine off the bat, I would automatically know that this is an old wine just based on the color. It looks old, and that's a good thing. We want it to look old because it is old. So some of the things that we're gonna see differently from younger wines is that this is going to have a lot more complexity on the nose and also on the palate. We're not just gonna get hit with a fruit bomb. The fruit is gonna be one of the last things we taste based on the age. So I'm gonna go ahead and check the nose of this wine. Gorgeous nose, definitely getting more of those tertiary characteristics first. That's gonna be the leather, a little bit of tobacco leaf, not necessarily smoked tobacco leaf, but just the plant itself. Some licorice is going to be in this wine. There are nice fruit characteristics to this. They're definitely, maybe you've been left out on the counter a little too long, or baked into a pie, things of that nature. They're not going to be fresh and tart and ripe. We get a lot of like cherry in this wine, a lot of fig, a lot of plum, a lot of blackberry. Very, very delicious on the nose, very well integrated. I'm really excited to try it. Gorgeous on the palate. We have a nice bright acidity to it still, which I absolutely love. The tannins are very, very soft. So as red wines age, we tend to see the tannins lengthen in their chemical components. So they're going to be very tight when we first see them. And then they get very soft as the wine ages. The softer the tannin, normally the older the wine is, depending on the variety. We are dealing with Tempranillo here, which is known for having high tannins. Very, very soft, very light. All the fruits are still very prominent on the palate as well. This wine, for being a 76, is still very vibrant and very young, very youthful. If I was blinding this, I would maybe say it's in the 90s, maybe a little bit older, maybe in the 80s, but probably realistically, I'd say it's in the 90s. Super delicious wine, really hard producer to find. These vines are what we called old vines, so they're older than 30 years old. And this was back when it was created in 76. So we're dealing with older vines, which have hardier fruit that they produce. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm super excited for you all to try this. Pairing wise, I personally would recommend eating this or drinking this by itself. It will go great with foods, but you want this to be kind of the showstopper. You want this to be the wine by itself. You want it to give it its own spotlight. But if you do want to eat it with some foods, I would go with some red meats, maybe some chicken, depending on how you're cooking it, with like a nice mushroom sauce, things of that nature. More earth-driven dishes compared to more bright dishes. So I would not put this with any sort of fish or anything of that nature. Cured meats is another really great option, would go phenomenal with a charcuterie board. Enjoy. I'm very excited for you all to try this. If you've never had a wine this old, enjoy, and please let us know if you have any questions.